They say we should have known better than to fall so deep down into this rabbit hole we found. And I was thinking...
Hi, this is Nikolai, and you're listening to my dad, Rafal, co-host James Jardine, and featuring Mr. Jim Tiller on the one and only Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. Plug in, listen up, and enjoy.
Deep into this pool of regrettable situations. Pitch black, think back to the last time that we were happy.
All right, here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome down the Security Rabbit Hole to another edition of the Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. I'm Raph. That's James over there. And that way. You pantomime elegant. That's Matt Carruthers. He's joining us today as a guest on a really fun topic. And then maybe like a bonus because third rail, like let's not touch the third rail. Let's just go ahead and put our tongue to it and see what happens. Because that's going to be super fun. But that means you have to stick around for the whole episode. Today, we're going to have a kind of interesting discussion about consumer internet stuff because, you know, you're all plugged in via the consumer internet somewhere. Odds are you're probably on either cellular data somewhere out for a jog on the treadmill at the grocery store or on your commute. But, two hands on the wheel, eyes straight ahead, please. Or you're on Wi-Fi, which is eventually going through some public consumer internet. Anyway, without too much more ado, Matt, welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, it's great to be here.
All right. Tell the good people who you are and what it is that you do for a living.
Well, my name is Matt Carruthers. I work for Cox Communications. We are a cable company and an internet service provider, if you're not familiar with us. My official title is Distinguished Security Architect, but I usually just introduce myself as an internet janitor.
That is, you are the second person that in the last couple of years that I've heard introduce themselves as a internet janitor. The other one I think has been on my show, but I'm thinking like in the early teens episodes. So it's been a minute. I haven't talked to him in a while, but all right. What does an internet janitor do?
Well, I do a bunch of stuff. My primary role is what we call industry engagement, which is working with people outside of Cox. So trust groups, researchers, academics, our friends in the government, law enforcement, anyone outside of Cox. Then the other hat I wear is more around cyber innovation, research projects, that kind of stuff. Trying to look forward and see what the next thing is going to be.
All right. That sounds fun. I want your job.
It is.
So we met at a local meeting here where you were talking about residential proxies. And I thought, I've heard that topic talked about before. It's not something I think about a lot, although since then I have been thinking about that a lot. Give us a quick rehash of the topic for the listeners who maybe don't know what that is or why the topic's so important.
A residential proxy is a piece of software, often malware, sometimes not, that is sitting on a device that's in your network. Could be in your phone, could be on an app, it could be an infection on an IoT device, and it gives a threat actor or sometimes a paying customer access to your device in order to source traffic from your network.
So it blew my mind that is both a semi-legitimate business, but also associated with crime, and that there are people that sign up for these things willingly.
Yeah. This is part of why working security at an ISP, I think, is the best cybersecurity job. It's really fulfilling because the scope is so broad. So as an ISP, my scope is everything from your grandma has a residential proxy up to national security issues. So as an ISP, yeah, we have a traditional enterprise that we defend like everybody else, but then we've got this whole service delivery network. And when you're defending a normal enterprise, you've got the attackers and you've got you. But as an ISP, we're sitting in between the attacker and the defender. So we have the options to detect attacks or possibly even interrupt attacks and protect millions of people all at once. And residential proxies are probably the biggest hot button issue around that right now.
Why? So this has been, the talk you guys gave was super interesting in that it could be, it's such a difficult thing to detect and stop, right? Because it just looks like regular traffic, doesn't it?
For the most part, yeah. A lot of them are noisy enough that they're not too hard to detect. But the bigger question is, what do you do about them? So I was listening to your interview with Dan Gear, and he mentioned his family and how difficult it is to secure his family.
Yeah.
So imagine talking to your parents or your grandparents and trying to tell them what a residential proxy is and having to try and walk through finding what device it is. We're at a point where we all have just dozens of devices in our house, and a lot of them don't have interfaces. Years ago when we started this ISP thing, if somebody had malware in their house, they probably only had one or two PCs. And so it was easy to point out what the device was. But now you've got botnets like Kimwolf that are actually spreading through residential proxies, using the res proxies to get inside your home network and infecting everything they can get their hands on. So the botnet might be an internet-connected picture frame. It could be your phone. It could be your router. We once found a botnet that was made of internet-connected tea kettles. Like, why does that even need to be connected to the internet anyway?
That's amazing. The level of sophistication in kind of how the threat actors use this stuff was interesting for botnet activity a la DDoS and stuff like that, like actual crime. But what makes it really interesting is when you guys started talking about how these are on in public marketplaces that you can use to commit like fraud. So if you've got a credit card that you stole from somebody that lives in Surprise, Arizona, because there's actually a town called Surprise, Arizona, and on the northwest side, you can actually look for a residential proxy to conduct your fraudulent transactions through that is in the same area to help pass fraud checks. That blew my mind. And I've been in security a long time, and that was cool. Again, in a totally bad way.
100%. Though I'll say that's not the main driver of res proxies anymore.
Okay.
The biggest growing driver of res proxies is AI, because every AI company wants to scrape the entire internet. And if they just try and download the internet from, their corporate office or something, they're sure to get blocked. But if they spread their connections out through, millions of proxies, it hides what they're doing in the noise.
Well, that's interesting. Okay, so residential proxies aside, because that's a fun topic. I think we should probably revisit at some point in the near future completely. I wanted to talk to you about how do you design a network as a service provider, knowing that you have sort of some duty of care to protect, but whom from what? Because you've got bad actors attacking your consumers attacking something else, and then them beating up on each other. How do you how do you model that? How do you architect that for some sort of logical defense? Because the data points there would make any analytics engine or SIM cry uncle really fast. What is it that you guys focus on, and what's the order of importance there? If that's not revealing too much.
So I'll say it varies from ISP to ISP because there's no unified standard about what an ISP's responsibility is. Some people are more hands-off and see an ISP as just a dumb pipe, get the packets from point A to point B. Others feel like ISPs should be more responsible for the traffic that's going across their networks. And I'd say Cox lands somewhere in the middle. We are a privately held company, and I think that's given us some latitude to do things more just because it seems like the right thing to do, as opposed to needing to make some kind of financial sense for shareholders, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we have a very active customer safety department. Back in the day, the first thing I did in 2001 when I started with Cox was I started Cox's first abuse department. So if you're not aware, every ISP has a mailbox, which is abuse@company.com. And the point of the abuse mailbox is for the entire internet to complain about our customers. So if a customer is doing anything that violates our acceptable use policy, whether they're DDoSing, they're spamming, they're calling each other names on the internet, someone is going to complain about that. And in the early days, we really were dealing with intentional abusers. So we would get a bunch of complaints about a spam run, and it would turn out that it was a customer spamming for their own business. But that changed in the early 2000s as malware really started to take hold. And we started to see that those spam runs were just malware infections on people's PCs. The PCs were being used as proxies. Like, you could think of these as the first prototypical residential proxies. And so we shifted our focus, and we actually changed the name from the abuse department to the customer safety department. As an aside, I used to have the most amazing title ever in the history of titles, which was manager of abuse, but no longer have that.
Tell me you have a business card with that on it somewhere still.
I think I do, actually. I need to go dig that out.
That's an amazing job title. Manager of abuse.
So yeah, we've had a lot of initiatives over the years to try and proactively detect when people have infections. One great example is Shadow Server. Shadow Server is a nonprofit that just scans the whole internet every day, all the time, for a lot of different vulnerabilities. Then they provide that data back to the people who own that IP space or to national certs, stuff like that. So we take this Shadow Server data, and as we see that customers have vulnerabilities, we try and contact them and tell them that they have the vulnerability. That's
got to be an interesting endeavor.
Oh, yeah. It's a super hard problem. You have to find someone at the victim's home to talk to. So if you call up a business, you're not just going to have a cybersecurity professional picking up the phone. It's going to be somebody who has never heard of cybersecurity. For the long tail of small and medium businesses, they don't have any cybersecurity people. A lot of the small people just has, it's like my nephew in high school is the one who does my computers. Then you have millions of residential customers who have, not even the nephew in high school. Then we get back into the problem we discussed before of how do you identify what the vulnerable device is? If you can identify it, is there a way to upgrade it or patch it? How do you walk your grandmother through patching her IoT light bulb,
How do you distinguish too between what's the mark of I've contacted somebody, but we're either not getting anywhere or they're not doing anything? Is there a point where it's like we're going to stop allowing traffic from your system because it's doing XYZ? Or is it just hey, we do our best to contact and help you out, but we'll keep letting it fly as long as you don't do anything to it? Is there a line there that you can stop it?
Oh, for sure. We make a decision based on a couple of things. One is how much threat is the customer under? Like, how likely it is that they're going to be harmed. And the other is how likely it is that they're going to harm someone else. So if they have a run-of-the-mill kind of malware, we'll notify them a few times, but we're probably not going to go so far as to shut off their internet service. But if it's something more serious where maybe the FBI has contacted us and said that they're seeing crimes being committed from this IP address, and this customer is in danger of having their door kicked in, we might actually suspend their service, make them call in, and take a further step beyond just shooting them an email. And of course, if they're DDoSing 24/7 and they're impacting their neighbors, they're impacting the network, then we're much more likely to take them offline.
How does that work when you've got residential service? Thinking of just ISPs in general, if you're phone is on that. Like, hey, I do everything through AT&T, my Wi-Fi hotspot, everything through it. I shut them off. How do I call in? You know, are you down to an SOS signal? Or are you know, like, how do you alert somebody when I go turn my TV on, instead of saying internet's down, it's going to pop up and say, you know, like, hey, there's detected stuff on your system, which, by the way, feels an awful lot like what the scammer would do to get you to call the number and give them your credit card information.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I will specify that we never shut off phone service. We never do anything that could impact someone's ability to call 911. So we are very conscious of physical safety. The physical safety of our customers is paramount beyond any other type of safety, in fact. As for how they would contact us, when we suspend somebody's cable modem, we put them in what's called a walled garden, which means wherever they try to browse. It's like when you sign on to hotel Wi-Fi.
But you haven't signed in yet. You have to, everything you try to go to brings you to the login page.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Quickly on the physical part, like, we don't shut off cellular. With the way that we have internet connected devices in the home, healthcare devices, all that stuff, how do you know from a perspective, hey, wow, this person's got something seriously wrong, but they also have some sort of internet connected device, life support device, that we got to cut it, but if we cut it, could actually be physically a problem. I mean, I'm hoping that's a rare occurrence, but I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Everything's internet connected. Boom, I lose my internet.
Way to find the outliers, Jay. Way to find the outliers.
So yes, that's absolutely a concern. So what we find is, if somebody has a device that is keeping them alive, if the only thing keeping them alive is their residential ISP service, then something is architected wrong.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the first time a tree lands on a power line or something, they're going to be in trouble. So in practice, we don't find that there are things that are going to harm a customer that way if their internet service goes down.
Can you, because, you know, some of us in our youth caused some mischief that may have gotten us in trouble with our internet providers once or twice. I'm not saying I did that. I'm just saying I know some people, and, you know, there's lots of us that are getting to that age where at that particular point in time, when the internet was young and cable modems were still a privilege only a few could get, this is a thing. How much of the time do you really look at outbound versus inbound versus like inside the consumer network, then out to peer partners, other parts of the internet? Like, how is it equal dedication of inspection? Is there a priority list in there that says, you know, like we're more interested in the outside internet lobbing grenades into our, you know, our provider, our IP space, then we're interested in us lobbing grenades from inside to out? Like, is there a prioritization, or is this everything kind of equal?
Well, first of all, we don't do the level of inspection that people think ISPs do. We don't have the ability to just go look at all the websites you've browsed or any of that. There's no one at an ISP who's just watching your traffic. In practice, when we're talking about cybersecurity stuff, it's when we get complaints from the outside, like a customer is launching a DDoS or something like that. The automatic monitoring we do is more in terms of attacks against our network. Okay. So we have a system in place that detect DDoS attacks just based on the volume of traffic. We're not looking at the contents of the traffic, but if there is a large volume of traffic from a lot of sources heading towards one of our customers, we have systems that will automatically detect that and put blocks in place at the edge.
Okay.
What does the role of VPNs do now from an ISP perspective? I mean, you see the commercial. You know what I mean? Like, you see the commercial, protect yourself. And I feel like one of the bullets is protect yourself from your ISP spying on you. Is that, you know, like there's a lot of stuff
by giving somebody else the ability to spy on you.
That's right. Yeah. Don't show them, show us.
I roll my eyes so hard when I see those ads, because the fact of the matter is we're not looking. We don't care if you have a VPN. Run all the VPNs you want. It does not matter in the slightest to us.
Does that change, though, your ability to analyze the issue, right? Like, if I'm running through a VPN from my house, you'd no longer see like I'm the one doing the spamming or doing that stuff, right? Like, I mean, you'd lose the insight into what some of the customers are doing from that perspective, not the what it is you're doing, but now the res proxies, the different things that are out there, you become kind of blind to it. Are you able to see that? Are there analytics that say like this many people are using VPNs or anything like that, or that's kind of blind to that?
Yeah, and if you're sending spam through your VPN, go for it, dude, because that exit IP is not a Cox IP, and I'm never going to get the complaint about that.
That's fair.
I love
That's
the not
fair.
my problem. I want a shirt that says that, because I mean, it's a good point, right? Like, I mean, that's the purpose of it. Just curious how that, plays out when you got people that are kind of, I don't want to say they're skirting the system.
Right.
Right.
It's worse from the residential proxies because that's the bad guys coming into our customer homes and then exiting the bad traffic through the customer's house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting problem to solve. I mean, from an ISP perspective, the only view you guys get really is the network view, right? And, given the volume of traffic, and I know every vendor says they can inspect large volumes of traffic, but it's really hard to meaningfully inspect. Like, what's your? Do you have a rough idea of what your collective throughput is on a 70% basis?
No clue.
No clue. Yeah, I mean, like, just thinking about that type of volume, right? Because you guys got some fat pipes, if I may. Just looking at like volumetrically being able to analyze all that, the computational ability doesn't make any sense to try to put that in place to analyze like packet by packet. But for some things, you almost have to be able to say, if I'm tapped on the shoulder and told you need to go collect data on this residential IP address, on this traffic, that you be able to carve that out and take copies, maybe? I mean, that's a lot of, is that kind of stuff architected into the way you guys build out a network?
Sort of. So there is a law called CALIA, Communications Assistance for Law Enforcement, something like that. It's basically a law that says that for broadband, we have to have parity with telephone systems when it comes to receiving court orders and answering those. So if we get a lawful wiretap order signed by a judge, et cetera, we have to be able to respond to that. And so we have systems that are built into the products that we buy on our network that enable that to happen. But that's an extreme corner case. I couldn't just go out today and say, well, I want to see what Raf's doing, so I'm just going to push a button and see all his traffic. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
In practice for network monitoring, what we use is a technology called NetFlow.
Yep.
So NetFlow is like a summary of traffic. It's like a source IP, a destination IP, ports, a number of packets and byte cents. It is not the contents of the traffic, and it's heavily sampled. So we're sampling like 1 out of every 5,000 or 10,000 or whatever flows. So not useful at all for saying what one customer is doing, but definitely useful for like a volumetric DDoS attack. Mm-hmm. The other important part is that ever since that Snowden thing happened, privacy has been getting better and better. So the vast majority of traffic on the internet today is encrypted. So even if we could all, just collect it all and look at it, it wouldn't do us much good, especially as TLS has gotten better. With TLS 1.3, you can't even see what the host name is in the TLS hello. Like in older versions of TLS, you still couldn't see the contents, but you could at least see the name of the server that the person was connected to. And that doesn't happen in TLS 1.3 anymore, at least if you have it configured that way. The other thing is there are a ton of content delivery networks and proxy networks, like Cloudflare, for example. Cloudflare has a small number of IPs with just millions of domains pointed at them. So if we see a packet going to Cloudflare, who knows what website that was?
Yeah, fair enough. So that's an interesting, that's all super interesting to me, because when you look at, NetFlow, SFlow, all the different sample types of sampled network analysis tools, you're really looking for broad patterns of traffic. You're not getting individual streams, individual connections, and it's just the systems can't support that kind of thing. What was the thing about encrypted traffic is interesting. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Obviously, I work for a network security company in my day job, and the amount of time that before everything became encrypted, we spent looking at traffic and being able to analyze it. And then it was, the whole motion became, let's encrypt everything. It'll increase our privacy. And then it was just sort of like, let's put these nice big blinders on. And now we don't see what's going on. Now it's incredibly difficult. And it's incredibly difficult to look inside any particular, like TLS 1.3 with PFS makes it, practically impossible, right? And breaking, even if you have a proxy that you're pushing all your traffic through, because that's not too far-fetched, right? That terminates encrypted connections and reassemble, analyzes and reassembles. The volume of requests that you have that you would get, and the farm of the size of the proxies would be, I just like thinking in my head, just absurd amounts of like an entire data center full of just forwarding proxies, and then trying to analyze and collect data from that. It feels not just impracticable, just like dizzyingly difficult.
Oh yeah, completely impossible at an ISP scale. This is definitely a problem that impacts enterprises everywhere as well. Because back in the day, if we had an employee that had a malware infection, the bot was probably using something like IRC or HTTP or something that would be very easy to sniff out. But now, if it's TLS 1.3 to Cloudflare, unless we have more tools within our enterprise, just looking at those packets isn't going to tell us much.
Right. That's an interesting. It's you guys have this interesting problem where you are both the source and the destination for a lot of bad stuff, and then there's like grades of bad stuff, right? Like people doing things that are illegal, but like back when DMCA notices were a big deal, right? And that was like, okay, you're downloading things off of, what was it, Napster or LimeWire or whatever, and that's bad. And then there's like the spectrum of like, okay, this is criminal. And then suddenly like the far end of that spectrum is like national security type bad. How often maybe I'll just ask this because I've been thinking about it. How often do you get to chase like NatSec on residential networks?
More often than you would think. Right. The nation states are also using res proxy.
That's not surprising.
Yeah, the term of art is ORB, Operational Relay Box. So let's see. One of them I think was called VPN filter. That was one that was disrupted, I think, by FBI. It was like a Russian res proxy network some years ago. So that is absolutely happening at a nation state level as well.
Well, there you go. So that keeps you guys busy. How big is your customer safety, don't call it abuse department? Like, is that like just hundreds of people? A lot of automation?
No, it's maybe half a dozen.
Okay, so a lot of automation then.
It's a lot of automation, and we also lean pretty heavily on our customer care department.
Okay. I noticed you didn't say AI was doing all the work.
No, it's not. When it comes to AI, I always say my glass is half full. It's half full of tears and human suffering.
I'm impressed we almost made it 30 minutes, Raph, without AI coming in.
I was going to say, I had to bring it up because I felt like we were just going to miss it otherwise.
I thought it was coming earlier, but we did good. That's a record, I think.
Yeah. All right, so Matt, what
else? What I'll say about AI. If you think about it, the weakest link in any security chain is always the human.
Yeah.
And what are LLMs good at? Interacting with humans. So AI supercharges some of the cruelest kinds of crimes. So say you are a business email compromise threat actor, and you're somewhere in Nigeria and you have just convinced someone's finance department to send you $100,000. You can't just have that money deposited in your own bank account. It needs to be split up into smaller amounts and filtered through money mules. And often those money mules are romance scam victims. So these are people who honestly believe that they are in a committed relationship with someone who loves them. And it's not. Back in the day, it was easier to find these things. So think about the old MTV show Catfish. They would have a catfisher who just found an Instagram model, stole their pictures, created a Facebook profile with it, and created a relationship. But there are holes in that because you could just do a reverse image search and find the Instagram model. Or the person who was being catfished could say, hey, send me a picture of yourself in that sweater that I sent you last week or something. And the threat actor would have to rely on their Photoshop skills to make that happen, or, just lie. These days now I can just go to AI and say, create me a profile picture that looks like X. And if I need it to do something else, I can recreate that same picture in a different pose or different clothes or whatever. It's not reverse searchable. And the whole process of maintaining a fake relationship, the good morning text, the I love you, good night text, that kind of stuff, that can just be an LLM now. So it scales up the operations of some of the worst threat actors out there.
This is like really taking the most emotionally vulnerable parts of our society and just really exploiting the hell out of it in an automated way. Like I understand every piece of everything we do, every technology, every discovery, every new innovation has two edges, right? One that cuts for good and one that cuts for bad. I just hope that the good can make up for all the crap that this is, that we're able to automate and really, because I've seen demos of people taking video of themselves and in real time becoming a completely guy, becoming a supermodel female right before your eyes through the camera lens, and it's near real time. It's like, you can't even believe. Remember, they believe none of what you see, none of what you hear, only half of what you see. I don't think it's half of what you see anymore.
Absolutely,
especially if it's coming over the internet.
This is super dark, but it's something every parent needs to hear. There are threat actors out there who are targeting teenage children.
Yeah.
The old version of the scam was create a fake profile, convince usually a teenage boy, but not always, to send some kind of compromising photos, and then blackmail them. Say, I'm going to send these pictures to everybody you know, and your life is going to be over if you don't get me some money. Now, with AI, they don't even need to convince the kid to do anything wrong.
Right.
They can just take their Facebook pictures or whatever and generate some bad images of it and start the blackmail. And, this has caused kids to commit suicide.
Yeah.
This is...
Yeah, it's bad. It's
one of the
really
worst
bad
crimes I can imagine.
Yeah, it gets real dark real fast, and there's competing technology that's trying to detect stuff like that. But man, the damage done, like, that is not a genie you get to put back in a bottle. Like once something like that has happened, even if the police say, hey, this was a manufactured image.
Mm-hmm.
That's terrible.
Is that something though where solving the problem isn't the how do I stop people from doing it? Because you're never going, like, the cat's out of the bag at that point. Like, it's going to happen. How do you get to the point where you've taken away the value of that?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And, I don't know what that solution is. Do we just go ahead and take every picture on the internet and let it go create a exposing thing? You'd be like, look, everybody's got it out there. Like, boop, you can't use it now.
I don't think that I want that. Thank you so much, James.
But I'm just saying, like, how do you get to the point where you're saying I can take the value away from that? Like, what you just thought, the Social Security number was great. I'm going to take the value out of Social Security number. Whatever, you got it. Who cares? Because we changed how that works, and nobody now values that as the key to success for things. Like, that's where I think we have to figure out, how do you solve that problem? Because trying to do, like the input validation, right? We'll try to block every new thing somebody comes up with.
Yeah.
Versus changing how people view that type of stuff, where, maybe it just becomes like, it happened. And people just kind of get to the point where, like, nobody cares, and that's a hard thing to do, obviously. I mean, as a society, we treat those type of situations very, sensitive, but how do you remove the sensitivity of it, that no longer can somebody hold that over your head to be able to force you to do something? And how do you get younger people to start identifying with that and understanding it, to know that there's an outlet when this comes, that, what somebody tells you is whatever. Like, don't worry about it. Nobody cares. Everybody's affected by it. And someday everybody's going to hit by it. I don't know how you do it, but I think that's how you get that solution, not the, how do we keep trying to block it? Because that's just whack-a-mole that never solves the root of the problem. The problem is it's sensitive in the first place.
Yeah. The best advice for someone who's being extorted: ignore it. If the person releases the pictures, then it's going to be embarrassing, but it's not going to be the end of your life. And in most cases, the threat actors don't even follow through. They just move on to the next victim.
Yeah.
But this whole idea of disrupting cybercrime is another big topic. So let's say there's a botnet and we have the ability to block that traffic on our network. Should we do so? Because it is whack-a-mole. The bad guys are not just going to say, oh, our IP was blocked, I guess we'll stop doing crime now.
Right.
Ultimately, if nobody goes to jail, the problem doesn't get solved. But law enforcement does not have the resources, and there are so many challenges dealing with international crimes that there's no way to go arrest everybody. In practice, all we can do is just go after the highest profile targets.
Or just block Russia and China.
That's an issue when the threat actors are in a country that is not going to extradite anybody.
Right.
So what our law enforcement has to do is just issue an indictment and hope that that person travels to an extradition-friendly country.
Yeah. Well, as a kind of a final thought, I wanted to just think through this for a second, and then we've got like a minute, so I'll let you answer it, and I'll be quiet about it. But I've been thinking a lot about how the spread of the internet to different groups of people impacts people's lives, and then how cyber related disruptions, right? Whether it's criminal activity, whether it's DDoS, some sort of taking down of services, how that impact, because I think that disproportionately impacts places that aren't well meshed, that don't have good overlaps, backups, that kind of thing, right? Think about like a rural hospital or somebody out, as they say, out in the sticks, right? You're out in the rural country versus somebody that is living in an apartment in the city where, like, if your internet gets cut off, cool, you go downstairs at a Starbucks, right? How do you guys deal with the fact that there are different, I don't know, socio-demographics, I guess, of people on your network? Is it everybody sort of equal out there, or is there some sort of prioritization in that regard?
We don't really take demographics into account when we're doing cybersecurity.
Okay.
I mean, it's not even data that our cyber team has access to. Though you bring up a good point, which is that small businesses and rural areas have an extreme lack of cyber talent.
Right.
So how do you take someone who is making a six-figure salary in the private sector in cybersecurity in a big city and say, I want you to move to a town of 5,000 people and take a 50% pay cut so that you can keep a rural hospital safe? There's just not enough cyber people to go around, and the larger organizations are too lucrative.
Yeah. And so does that then, like, do you guys, I don't know how to say this, but I'm struggling, as you can tell, for words, because I want to say, like, okay, as the provider, you have some ability to say, I'm going to offer some kind of services to them that's going to, like, even if that hospital has absolutely nobody that can spell cyber, I can at least protect them at their front door or at the pipe, right? To try to like block and disable or degrade the ability of a threat actor to do damage. But at some point, like that becomes costly, and there's only so much cost you can absorb, even as a private company.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have managed services, like you can buy a managed firewall from us and we'll run it for you. And that'll give you some basic level of protection that you wouldn't have if you just plugged in your home router.
Got it.
And we have some defenses that cover our whole network, like that DDoS detection system I was talking about. But there's not a lot else we can do. We don't have the staff or the expertise to even try and walk grandma through finding her IoT picture frame, much less figure out how to secure a hospital.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That also has a liability issue there too, right? Because, I mean, if you're sitting there offering up some piece of, we'll help protect you here, if that doesn't work, something goes past that, now you're fighting the liability or the legal cases of, wait a minute, you said you were doing this. Like there's a fine line, I think, there as well, trying to figure out what you can do. I mean, we do see some of these ISPs that have like their mobile apps that you can put on there that'll help lock down your accounts or secure your systems. But again, right, like there's such a difference in everybody's situation. If I go and say I'm going to do that, I feel like it's the same with like the browsers when they try to do things like cross-site scription protection, like that type of stuff where like, oh, we'll solve the problem for you. And then fast forward 10 years and they're like, yep, we're yanking that because that was dumb, right? Like there's only so much you can do at that point where people start saying, oh, well, I don't have to do anything because X has this covered for me. And it's like, it's not really that true. It's not fully covered for you. It's doing a little piece.
There is absolutely a problem with no good deed going unpunished in cybersecurity. And I could spend another hour talking about liability and responsibility.
I think we will, because that's one that I know we wanted to get to. We're out of time, but I want to get to it because boy, do we have some stuff to say on that, I'm sure. All right. Well, Matt, this has been fun. We're going to have you back because there's more to talk about. This has been an interesting conversation. Folks, if you aren't aware of the whole residential proxy problem, you can Google it. I'm sure, Matt, you got some resources on that as well somewhere you want to tell people about?
Yeah, absolutely. Check out a website called spur.us. They're a service that detects residential proxies, but they also have some really good blog posts on what residential proxies are doing. Also, obviously, Krebs on security. He's had some really good articles about Kim Wolf lately, even talking about like who's benefiting from this and why are they doing it.
Perfect.
And I'll just close by saying that if you have a service that you're downloading that tells you you're getting a free VPN, just understand that if the product is free, you are the product, and probably you are turning yourself into a VPN exit node.
Yes, that is the eternal, like, hey, if it feels too good to be true, it's because it is.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, Matt, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining us. We'll have you back. Everyone, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode and follow along for the next ones. Thanks for listening, you guys. We'll catch you another time, another place on yet another Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.
This is Bella. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to leave my dad a review and share this with your friends. Bye.